Hey, what is going on, everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and welcome back to another episode of Mario's Minute. For those who do not know, this here is my second podcast that I do. My main podcast, Mod Chat, is a little more edited, a little more, planned out, you can say. I was going to say scripted, but it's not necessarily that. But that is a podcast I do in which I come on here at least once a month, and I talk to you all about things that I find new, interesting, cool, and what have you in the world of video game modding and video game console modding. Now, this is not that. This here is Mario's Minute, where I come on here once a month. Sometimes I have a guest on, sometimes I don't, and I really just talk about whatever the hell I want to. It's really not all too scripted. I kind of just work with a bit of an outline, and it's kind of just a little bit of a chill, laid-back thing that it's a little bit therapeutic here. It's fun to do. It's pretty much a low effort with a lot of heart. That's kind of how I've described it before, but I come on here, I have a little bit of fun. I get to talk with you all, discuss a few things, I suppose, in a way. Usually it's like through comments and all that stuff, and thankfully the people here who listen to it every month seem to really mess with it, and to you all, I really appreciate that. Thank you. I really do. It means a lot. Either way, like I said, it is my podcast where I come on here, I talk to you all once a month about whatever the hell I want to, and I've just been doing several solo episodes for a hot minute now. Sometimes I have a guest on. I was trying to get them on every other month, but you know what? That's on me here, so I'm kind of just dropping that, but it's usually just easier to sit down when I have a little bit of time and just speak into a mic about whatever's on my mind. It is available in two different forms. It is available in a visual form here on the Mr. Mario 2011 YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey channels. Additionally, it's also available in an audio-only form like an actual podcast, so you can take it around and listen to it wherever the hell you want to. Simply look up Mario's Minute on your favorite podcasting app, host, provider, or platform, and you should hopefully be able to find it. I know it's not available on all of them, but it is available on most of them. Either way, we're really just going to be talking about, a small handful of topics I have here. Sometimes I come on here and I'll have just a lot of stuff that's currently happening that I want to talk about, or sometimes I just have one or two things, and this is going to be one of those episodes where it's maybe one or two things. It might be a shorter one. I don't know how long the final runtime is going to be, but I guess we'll see, and I guess you're seeing when you're loading this up here. But I had one overall topic that I kind of wanted to entertain a little bit, and I just kind of wanted to talk to you all about. And I think it's something that every once in a while, this could also be revisited as well, too. Now, I've talked about this a little bit here and there over the years. There's been twice, actually, on Mario's Minute, I've talked about this, in which I've said what I would recommend for a first hard mod for someone, right? Because one of the main themes of my channel, it's not everything that I do, but I would say that it's pretty much the thing that I'm known for, is video game modding and video game console modding specifically. Now, when it comes to that, a lot of people have asked me, what would be an easy mod to get into? What is an easy mod to try? Because for me, I'll give a little bit of a background here. I've always been a software person, just kind of doing the software modifications, messing around with software, learning software. It's always been really interesting to me. And even when it's challenging, it's still quite interesting to me. And one thing I do enjoy is I like being able to teach, I like being able to show people and take something that seems really complicated, maybe even impossible, just really difficult to some people, and being able to learn that myself, take it and boil it down in a way to make it much less complex and where you can just kind of follow along. Some of the examples are just I've been able to, I was growing up showing people how to do certain things with their computers. One of the things was in school, for example, in elementary and even middle school, and I think high school as well too. I was teaching people how to do basic video editing and all that. There was people who wanted to do that stuff, and it was just really cool being able to show them and then seeing them progress and get better with it, and in some ways even surpass me with it too. So that was really cool. I've just always enjoyed doing stuff like that, and and part of it is because these are things that to me seemed impossible. These are things that to me seemed like they were so unobtainable. But I was like, well, I have a computer here. I have my brain. I have my hands. I have time. If I can get a hold of the software, I could probably kind of figure this out. And meanwhile, I'm not a developer by any means, right? I did try to go for a computer science degree at one point, and that I learned the hard way. My brain just doesn't work like that. I can do a little bit of development here and there. I can do some scripting. I can do some coding. I'm better at reading than I am writing it. but it's also just something that I don't really have much of a passion for. So that's why I really don't push myself on that either. Occasionally I will. If I want to do something small, sure, I'll do that. But overall, I'm not trying to build out, big programs or anything. That part just doesn't really excite me, that like creation and code writing aspect of things. But learning software, being able to manipulate it in certain ways, that's always been fun for me. Which it's something I'm kind of now after doing this on the channel for so many years, I'm looking back a little bit on it now. I'm just like, oh, okay, I guess, that's kind of what helps out people here. Because to me, I've always looked at it as a lot of the stuff that I do, I didn't know how to do it at the beginning. All these game consoles I learned how to modify and such, I had no idea what I was doing. Or even different systems, I didn't know how to do those. And I didn't really see myself as a genius or that smart of a person or anything. I really didn't. There's people who they'll try to like compliment my intelligence, and I actually feel really uncomfortable when that happens because I kind of just see myself as like average in that. But to me, I kind of look at it as like, you know what, if I don't really know what I'm doing and I'm able to learn this, I can probably explain this and teach it to other people there. So that's kind of a lot of the impetus of what I do on the channel here. But with that comes a lot of people asking, what are some of the easier systems to mod, or was an easy system that I can get into, or what would you recommend that I get into, or what would you recommend I try to mod up here? Because there's some people that really like to just jump right into the deep end. For example, there's going to be people who they've never touched a soldering iron before. They don't know what flux is, and they get a Xbox 360 for like $10 that's working, and they pick up a microscope, a soldering iron, a few other things, and they solder in a few wires, and they do a reset glitch hack mod on there, which is awesome. If you're able to do that, fantastic. That is super cool. That is really, really awesome. But a lot of people fail to do that, including myself. I failed many times at doing that. So you don't really, I tell people, you don't really want to go in overconfident with things. And that was another thing too. Some people might be wondering, okay, what are like some of the hardest systems to mod? I'm not going to focus the conversation on that. I want to more focus on the entry level things. So I actually wrote down some notes about this too. Not only have I been kind of mulling over this topic, but I've been writing some notes here as well. Just kind of thinking like, kind of some of the rules I want to apply in some way and how I want to go about this here. And some of the hard mods that I've talked about in previous episodes, I am going to discuss in here as well too. So one of the kind of blanket rules I wanted to pick for like easiest systems to mod, some people might say like, Nintendo or Famicom, Super Nintendo, Super Famicom, N64, DS, Sega Genesis, systems like that. Those systems I don't really want to count on here. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I don't really want to... I want to pick more of a thing where there's kind of some installation method of some kind, or you can just do it from scratch. And those systems, it's not like I'm like downplaying them, poo-pooing on them, whatever it is. It's more just those systems, you do have to typically get some kind of specialized hardware, such as, well, a flash card. So for the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, N64, Genesis, even the DS, you have to get a flash card of some kind. And then you have to get a SD card or a micro SD card. You put the files for your flash card on there. And then typically you just put your games on there and that's it. Yeah, there is homebrew. There are development capabilities depending on the cartridge you get and the setup as well too. But overall, I guess just in my head, I've never really seen that as as modding the system itself. That is a way to, play your ROMs, play your backup games, play your ROM hacks on there. But to call it an actual system mod, not as big to me on there. And this is, and I want to say this is completely my opinion, because there's going to be people who will say, well, if that's not a mod, then Free McBoot for the PS2 is not a mod. And you can certainly argue that there, but I would say that with Free McBoot, for example, you're still within the PS2's, I guess, operating system, for lack of a better term there, but you are adding more to that. That's where, you can take over kind of like the boot process there. You have more ability to actually like add apps actual applications on there, and there's more of a utility behind that and some changes you can make. But I digress still. If you turn off the PS2, unplug that memory card, turn it back on, it's a completely stock PlayStation 2 because you're not actually modifying the PlayStation 2 when you do that. If you're running an application such as like Mechapone, where you are modifying the actual Mechacon on there, then sure, that's going to be more of a different mod on there. But you all see how this can really digress. So I'm going to split some hairs here, but I just kind of want to say this is really just going to be kind of my opinion on here, and I mean, everyone's got one, right? So I didn't really want to pick a system where you go out, you buy a flash card, and that's it. Just like in the same way, I wouldn't count systems like the 3DO, the Sega Dreamcast, or even the Sega CD in this as well too, because some people could say, oh yeah, those ones are super easy to mod, and it's like, well, I mean, you kind of just burn it to a CD and you pop it in. I don't really know how much of a modification that is there. The Dreamcast does have copy protection on there, and I've talked about this several times, where if you tell people that the Sega Dreamcast's like actual copy protection itself hasn't been cracked open, people kind of look at you weird, because they'll be like, no, that's not true at all. You can just burn a game to a CD and play it. Obviously, there's no copy protection. There is copy protection, actually, and the reason why I say that is that the Dreamcast ends up using GD-ROMs for its actual disc type on there. Now, if you get all the stuff set up, you get a game, you create an image for it, and you actually burn it to a GD-ROM, and you pop it in the Dreamcast, it will not work. In order for it to run, you need a legitimate System Disc 2, which is a development disc. It is incredibly expensive to get now. It is rare as well too, even rarer now, but you cannot play that disc without using the System Disc 2. However, when people are talking about burning an image to a CDR and playing it on the Dreamcast, that is putting it through the MIL CD format and using the MIL CD exploit. But even with that, I don't really count that necessarily as a mod. I just count that as a way to play a game on the system. 3DO and Sega CD, you can do the same thing. They have no copy protection on there. The games come on CDs. You can take a CD, you can put it into your computer, like one of those games if you have the original. You can put it into your computer, use something such as Image Burn to back it up, and then you can just burn it straight away on a CDR, pop that in the drive, and it works. Like, that's all there is to it. So I guess getting more into it here, some of the big ones I really think about, like these are the ones I grew up with and really want to modify, are the PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 2. Now, those ones are definitely odd ones because they used to be a lot harder, and almost some of them that I wouldn't count, but now they are a lot easier to do. If you look at the PlayStation 1, for example, if you're just, and by the way, with modding here, we're really trying to get the ability to run unsigned code and backup games on there. But like I said, if there's some way to do some kind of installation method, or, have something with, I guess, some kind of accessible device there, like a USB drive, like a SD card, something like that. That's kind of what I'm trying to aim for when we're talking about easy in that regard. Which actually you could even say as well too, you could even argue that if you have to burn something, that is a lot harder to do in 2026. Not only it's computers haven't come with disk drives as default in so long, they are harder to find now as well too, along with blank media. It's still possible to find them, but even now you really struggle to find the average person who has burned a optical disc recently, So when we're talking about like the PS1 and the PS2, for example, the PS1, we can focus on that. That one, I would say, it was a harder one there, because you typically, if you just wanted to take some unsigned code, an emulator, a backup game, whatever it was, and you just want to burn it onto a disk and play it, just right out the gate, you would need a mod chip of some kind in the system. And there were ways where you could, kind of go about it. There were the parallel IO cartridges there, where in the earlier, most of the models, the original PlayStation, you could just pop it along the back and you can play burned discs and import discs that way. There was kind of an odd thing with that as well too, because when I kind of started covering things such as Unirom, for example, where Unirom essentially, it allows you to, there's a couple ways to install it. You can either install it on a parallel cartridge, or you could even install it, I believe, through free PSX boot. It's been a while since I've touched it, but you could put it on a memory card, essentially, and you can boot it up through there, because in recent years, and this is how it gets easier, there's been ways that have been determined where you could actually just run unsigned code. You can run an exploit from the actual system menu itself. Like, every single model is exploitable. I'm actually not 100% sure about the Japanese ones. I think the Japanese ones might be a little bit different, or I think you could do it on there, but there's a certain unlock disk drive command that those ones don't have. The Japanese BIOS does not have that. The PAL BIOS and the North American BIOS does, but not the Japanese ones. So again, we kind of have to split hairs here a little bit. And there's a lot more that you kind of have to get into with all that as well, too. But no, with the PS1, even if you want to do that, you have swap tricks available. So if you have an original disc and you have your burn disc, you could really just stop these sensors in a way. You don't even have to open up the system. You could use a spring, or for a while I didn't have springs for that, so you can literally just use tape. Unless you have like a PlayStation 1 Slim or the PS1, then there's another way to like stop the sensor on there. I didn't do it because like by the time I was actually messing with the PS1 Slim, I could solder, so I could just like burn my own mod chip, solder it in and everything, which is more than what a lot of people want to do. And even when it comes to soldering with those, it's not too difficult, but I've noticed the PS1, like specifically the original PlayStation, it is oddly sensitive for what it is. I have broken an embarrassing amount of original PlayStation systems. I think I've broken like 4, maybe even 5 of them just from like lifting pads and stuff like that, because I'm in there and I'm like, you know, I can do all these other systems, original Xbox 360, PS2, all these ones, but like then the PS1 is just like, the pads are huge compared to it. You don't even really need to do a good job wiring everything in there. And then it's just, you'll lift a pad. I lift a pad. That's what ends up happening. So I'm better about it now, at least. But yeah, with the PS1, it's gotten easier, thankfully. Some of the entries on there, like I said, you have the parallel I/O port. So you could just do, for example, you could do a swap trick. And this is what I've done. Like if you're willing to burn a disk, you could do a swap trick into like a Unirom installer, and you can reflash a parallel cartridge. So that way, when you just turn on the system, you boot up directly into that parallel cartridge, and then you can just pop in your disk and play. There's also ways where you can install that on the memory card as well too. Like I said, it's free PSX boot or even Tony hacks. There's a few options there. So you have that. But then the PS2 was another odd one, because of course you had mod chips there, which installing a PS2 mod chip, it's work. Like it's kind of interesting where if you look at the installs for it, it's kind of one of those systems you would think of with time it got easier, but not really. Like for a system as old as it is, it's like 26 years old now, right? And if not, it's almost 26 years old. The physical installation methods for it never really got easier. Now they got refined. There were better mod chips. There were better installation methods, but the actual install never really got easier. You know, it's not like we saw it from the original Xbox where like the first chips were like a 30-wire chip. It was something like that. And then it goes down to a 1-wire chip where it kind of was, it kind of wasn't. It was like, essentially you put a pin header in the LPC port and then you attach your chip and there's 1 wire you install. But even if you don't do that pin header, there's multiple wires you need to install. But the point is it got slimmed down. Even the original PlayStation had that as well too. I believe the original mod chips of the PlayStation were something like 10 or 15 wires. And now at this point, they're like maybe 6 wires, 7 wires tops, something like that. So even that got a lot more simplistic. But with the PS2, the reason why I say that one is an odd one is because people for a long time said it was incredibly easy, because they said, look, you just get any PS2 as long as it's not the PS2 TV, as long as it's not the PSX, and as long as it's not the 90,000 series PS2 Slims. You get any older PS2 than that, and then you just get yourself a free McBoot card. You get one from a friend, you buy one on eBay, whatever it is, and you just plug it into your PS2, you turn it on, boom, it's modded. But then people would say, yeah, and I would agree with this. They'd say, yeah, it's easy if you just want to buy one, but have you ever made one? And making one of those free McBoot cards was difficult because you had to have some way of running Homebrew on a PlayStation 2 in order to install free McBoot on a memory card. So, for example, you would need a PS2 where you end up doing a swap trick on it. The swap tricks are more difficult, they're more dangerous, they are harder on the hardware on the PlayStation 2. People were doing odd stuff as well, like I did some of these before, where you would essentially need to take a PS2 game and you back it up onto your computer, and then you need to take a specific file in that PlayStation 2 game and you replace it with ULaunch Elf. So that way what you do is you have to put in the original game and then you have to swap it at a certain time. And I hated doing swap tricks on the PS2. The PS1 is fine. The PS2, it just, you feel like you're killing the drive whenever you're doing it, right? Because you have to, like, especially if it's the FAT system, you have to take off like the front part there, like the actual like cover of it. And then you have to pretty much shim the drive open. You have to unlock it, pull out the tray, pull out the original disc, pop in the new one, shove it back in the tray, and then lock it. And you have to do that pretty quickly. But if you're able to do that, and it depends on the game, depends on how you burn it and everything, if you're then able to get the PS2 to play the backup of that game, you can then boot up ULaunch Elf. And if you can boot up ULaunch Elf, congratulations, that's Homebrew. You can then use something like a USB drive to load up the free McBoot installer, and then you install that on your memory card. Otherwise, if you went the harder route, like you have a mod chip in there, that's already been done. So that way you can just burn a ULaunch Elf disk, you pop it in, it runs, you run through the installer, you're good at that point. But what I'm saying is you need to have access. For a long time, you needed to have access to a PS2 that was capable of playing Homebrew of some kind. If you didn't have access to that, you had to make it happen, which was really rough to do. That's why a lot of people said, just buy one there. And I don't really want to count those ones, but if it's more accessible, I suppose it's better there. Now, the reason why I'm bringing up the PS2 here again is because it's still about the same when it comes to some of that, but it's become a lot more accessible now. You still need to buy something, but it used to be you have to go on eBay. Not everyone wants to do eBay. You have to go through a private seller. Not everyone wants to go through a private seller. Now you can buy these like modified memory cards. You can even like build them yourself if you're handy, if you're capable, if you don't mind soldering. You can. There's several open source projects out there. But let's say you cannot do that, right? You just want your software you want to get up and running. I actually have one right here, for example. You can get something like the PSX mem card. And you can do that, and it works for the PS1 and the PS2, at least the one that I have right here. But you can get something like that, or you can get a derivative of it. I think like the SD to PSX, that's also another one. And essentially you get one of those devices, and they're pretty easy to order. You can get a hold of them pretty easily, thankfully. You get one, you get yourself a micro SD card, and then from there, you really just put some files in a certain place on the micro SD card. You pop it into your PS2, depending on the model. Now, for the free McBoot ones, as long as you have a free McBoot image on there, you just turn on the system and you're good. That's it. If you have one where free McBoot is patched out, that's where you have to use something such as ForTuna or FunTuna or OpenTuna, which really just involves you go into the browser there, you go into the memory card, you exit out, and after that, you're in the land of Homebrew. You're in the land of unsigned code. You can run OPL to, play your backup games, stream them, load them from a hard drive, whatever it is. If you have a fat PS2 model, you can even just set up a hard drive and use an adapter to plug it in. And then when you boot it up, you load up like free HD boot on there. Or I think it's like PSN BBL, something like that, or PSBBL, one of those. There's several options for that now. So it's getting more accessible, but even with that, you need to get one of those network adapters. So I do kind of count the PS2 there. I'd say it's an intermediate one, right? If you're willing to get some of the specialized PS2 hardware, you can use other hardware to make it easy enough. Like, yeah, you need to get an adapter, like a hard drive adapter for the PS2, but then you can just get an off-the-shelf hard drive or SSD, you're good. Same thing with like the memory card options on there. As long as you're willing to order something like a PSX mem card or SD to PSX, you just need a micro SD card after that, and you're golden. You're in there. You're good. that's my feeling. I think the barrier to entry has lowered quite a bit, which is good there. Some of the ones that are really easy to the point of meme territory are the DSI. I've actually been really happy to see because I was there when, and I covered it on Mod Chat actually. I was there when the first DSI flash, not flashcards, but custom firmware modifications were out, and I had a DSI XL. I installed custom firmware on it. Pretty easy to do, right? You really just need to go follow a guide, follow the instructions, and there's really great up-to-date websites where it's pretty much just, hey, go to these places here, download these files, put them on this SD card, put them on a micro SD card, do this, do this, do this. Within 15 minutes, boom, your system is modded. And it's permanent, it's a software mod, it's sitting right there. You really just need internet, a computer, a way to get files onto a SD card or micro SD card, and that's really about it. So the DSI, I've actually been surprised though that custom firmware and the scene on there has matured enough that people are now actually wanting to modify DSIs more. That's been cool to me. The 3DS, I mean, that's at the point, there's a whole meme of it's surprisingly easy to mod a 3DS. And yeah, it really, as long as you, I would say this, it is kind of specialized in some way, not as in like hardware, but it's kind of like where you put the software, what you need to do and all that. But it has come a long way where you really don't need to think about it. You really just need to tell someone, hey, go to this website, follow the instructions, everything is there. Just don't ask me questions. Just follow the instructions. Within like an hour, tops, you should have a modified 3DS, even if you don't know what you're doing. So those ones are pretty easy ones there, and they're pretty rewarding with, you know, what you get out of it and what you're able to do and the capabilities and such. The Switch, the Nintendo Switch, that's a much loved one. I wouldn't say as much on there. And this is the reason why, because some people will say, well, dude, just get a year one Switch, just get an unpatched Switch, and at that point, you just need to either get a dongle, or if you don't get a dongle for it, because you essentially need to boot up the system in RCM mode, which is like a recovery, like a factory recovery mode. But in order to do that, you need to short 2 pins on the side of the system. And you can do that with something like a paper clip. I don't recommend doing that. Or just like getting a jig. And you can order a jig. You can even make your own jig. You can print yours as well too. There's so many ways that you can do that. But the reason why I don't say the Switch is super easy to mod is 2 reasons. One, if you want the easier way to modify the Switch, you need to go and you need to find an unpatched one. That means you need to find an original Nintendo Switch, which was manufactured in about the first year the system was released, right? Let's say the first like 12 to 15 months the system was out. You need to find one of those systems. But then even if you get that, just setting up the custom firmware, doing everything on there, kind of figuring out where everything goes, there's a lot of upkeep to it. I was talking with one of my best friends who he has a modded Switch set up and everything, and he maintains his. He does a good job with it, but he was talking with someone who wanted him to modify their Switch, and he pretty much told me, "Nope, I'm not doing that." One, because this guy doesn't really seem like the type. This guy just wants it done, right? He just wants you to do it for him. He's not going to be the type of person, and I'm not talking about my friend. I'm talking about my friend's person who he knew. They're not even friends anymore. It was just a person that he used to know. He pretty much told me, no, this is the type of guy where he just wants it done. You can't really sit it and forget it here, but he's going to want you to do it. He's going to ask you all the questions. He's going to want you to set it up. Every time there's an update, every time there's a question, he's going to come to you. Then my friend said, even from his experience, and he's capable, right? Like nothing difficult, but he's capable of all this. And he said, yeah, no, the thing is with the Switch, there's some level of maintenance. You have to keep going with it. You can't really modify your Switch once and then just leave it sitting there. And then like 5 years later, you grab it, you turn it on, and you can just, load up the latest games. You can load up the latest homebrew, all that stuff. Even certain things in the custom firmware scene end up changing. I know right now there's actually a really good opportunity. Switch firmware 22.0.0 just came out. At the moment I'm recording this, Atmosphere has not been updated for it. So they're working on new Atmosphere because there was a lot of changes to this firmware version, including libnx ended up breaking again. Libnx is essentially the SDK, the homebrew open source SDK that almost all homebrew for the Nintendo Switch uses. And the problem with these changes is that now with this, libnx has to change again, and that means all the homebrew that you're using, most of it is going to have to change again, as well as Atmosphere custom firmware. So you see, it's not just a simple thing of like, for example, this was, how long was it? Let's just say it was well over 10 years ago, right? You could modify a Wii for someone 10 years ago, and when they, even if they don't touch it for 5 years, they come back to it, it's pretty much going to be the same thing. They could do the same stuff on there. Yeah, if you want to, you could update a few things. If you want to do a few more things than you normally wouldn't be able to do. Let's say there's a game you want to play online with a custom server. You might have to get another application. You might have to get something set up. You might have to update a certain thing on your system. But outside of that, if you're just saying, dude, I just want to add more games to my system and play them, that's it. You can kind of just sit it and forget it. And you can do that with a lot of these systems. The original Xbox, for example, yeah, there's always changes. There's always updates. There's new BIOS. There's updates to the soft mods and stuff on there. But for the most part, if you installed a mod chip in your system like 8 years ago, if you soft modded your system 6 years ago, if you soft modded it 10 years ago, yeah, it would be better to update it, but you could still just get your system not connected to the internet, not update anything, and as long as it works, you can still enjoy yourself. With the Switch, a lot harder to do that. There's a lot more active maintenance you have to do if you want to keep up to date and still continuously keep updated and run your Switch, you know? So that's why I would say with that one, people want to say modding the Switch is easy. I would say it's not that easy just because of the upkeep and the maintenance that comes with it. And it's one of those systems, if you just kind of don't pay attention to the Switch for like 6 months, you come back to it, a lot of stuff changes. I've been talking about the difficult stuff. Let's get into the easy stuff now, though. Now, the Xbox 360, a very near and dear to me system, right? One of my favorites, obviously. I absolutely love the system. It's so funny because I've thought about this one for a while. Because this used to be, I would say, the hardest system to modify. And now I would say, at least with, let's say that generation, right? The 7th generation, for a long time it was the hardest one to modify. Now I would argue it's actually the easiest one to modify. Because if you want to modify it, you can use something such as bad avatar, bad update, which, yes, I do understand that it's going to be on a USB drive. When you unplug the USB drive, it brings the system to a stock state. I totally get that, right? But what you're able to do just with a USB drive on that system, the way you're able to unlock it and open it up, the capabilities are absolutely insane with what you can do on that system. You can completely transform it. I've said this, you know, when bad update, bad avatar were coming out, especially a bad avatar where it's at the point where you can really just put the files on a USB drive. And if you don't have auto sign-in enabled on your system, you just plug it into the system, you turn it on, you wait like maybe 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, and then boom, you're in the land of homebrew. That's it. With how easy that is and how fleshed out and how capable it is, if I just like hid my USB drive and turn on the system, set it up, let it run, and showed someone, hey, this is my RGH system, they would believe me. It doesn't have the same parity, but as like an RGH, and there's going to be people who will again split hairs and be like, no, you can do so much more. I agree with you on that, right? With the hard mod there, that's what I'm talking about. But what I'm saying is, you can just set it up to look like one, and most people will just, they're not really going to question it there. Now there's times I can look at it, like for example, I've looked at listings where people are like selling like a modded 360 or something, and when I see like, you know, a bunch of homebrew apps, games and all that stuff, and I see a USB drive sticking out, just like a cheap flash drive or something, I'm like, yeah, that's bad update, that's bad avatar, or whatever it is there. So there's that. But the reason why I say that is because if we look at the generation there, even the same thing happened with the PS3. I know like the Wii was pretty easy for the most part to modify. Usually the theme is these Nintendo systems are typically easy to modify. It's a little bit of a meme to that point, but they're pretty easy to modify. The PS3 was easy at one point, and then it was kind of difficult, I would say. Then it got easier, then it got harder, and then it got way easy. To the point where every single PS3 can be modified now with either custom firmware or the homebrew enabler, PS3 HIN. And really all you need is internet access and a USB drive. Those are the two things you need. For a while, it was not like that. And we're not going to revisit the dark times on there, but it's super easy to do with the PS3 now. But even then, that comes with certain roadblocks. If your disk drive is broken, you're going to have a bad time. If your if your Bluetooth board, if your Wi-Fi board are messed up, you're going to have a bad time. You're going to run into issues. Certain ways to format the USB drive. Typically, nowadays, like if you format a USB drive, it might just default to GPT. People don't know about MBR and GPT. The PS3 only takes MBR. Setting a large drive to FAT32, you're going to have to do that. Renaming, even the firmware a certain way. These are just little things that aren't too difficult, but they hang up a lot of people. But the 360 is so easy to the point where it's really just you can even format the drive. You can take a USB drive and format it on the Xbox 360. And then you plug it into your system, you plug into your computer, you download a few files, you put them in certain folders and a certain place on the USB drive, and you can really just, even if you don't know what you're doing, you can just extract, copy, paste. That's all it is. Plug it back into your system. After a few minutes, boom, you're in the land of homebrew. That's really all that there is to it there. I'm grossly oversimplifying it, but it is a lot easier to do. It's to the point where when I've seen there's people who've been like, I'm trying to follow this tutorial to mod my 360. I've done it like 5 times. I've done it perfectly step by step 5 times in a row, and I cannot get it to work. I'm just at that point, I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do to help you at that point. It is copying files to a USB drive and editing a single text file. That's all it is. If you cannot copy files properly, if you cannot edit a single text file, I'm sorry, you need to learn more computing skills. You need to learn a little bit more, because this is extremely basic. To the point where, yes, even though I am, a big Xbox 360 fan, I would say, right? And that's, I would say, even downplaying it just a little bit there. I used to understand, I used to respect, how difficult it was, barrier to entry, but now the entry is pretty much below the floor at this point. So I'm like, look, if you're trying to modify your system and you cannot get bad update running and you've tried it like 5 or 6 times in a row, please just stop, because I'm concerned. You need to just learn some basic computing. Was it Video Professor or something? We need to get you Video Professor. Just watch some basic tutorials over how to use a computer at a very basic level, because that's really all it is. A standard USB drive, you're copying files to it, you're editing one text file. That's really all it is for the 360 at this point. You don't even need to install anything on the 360 anymore. Nothing is even permanent with it. If you don't want to install any piece of homebrew, you don't want to touch anything directly on the system, you don't want anything to be permanent or persistent there, yeah, that's it. The Wii has been very easy. I've talked about this before. I guess I've talked about it here just a few minutes ago, but that one, it's really just, finding a guide. You need to get a SD card, which not everybody has an SD card available. Not everyone's messed with SD cards because there's a lot less of a need for them ubiquitously, I would say. If we're talking 20 years ago where everybody had digital cameras and all that stuff, people knew what SD cards were. These days, not so much. Even to the point where it was years ago, I want to say this is maybe 6-ish years ago, 6 or maybe even 7 years ago, there were some people I was helping out, I was telling them, this is back when you could get a 3DS for really cheap, right? A refurbished one. And I had told some friends about modding them. And one of them, he did get it modded, but it took him a few days because he said, yeah, I didn't have anything with it. I didn't have a way to load up an SD card. And I was like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, no, and I asked about it. He's like, no, I didn't have an adapter. I didn't have a micro SD card. I've never messed around with micro SD cards. I never had to until the DS here. So there was even people like that several years ago. And now there's even less of a need for it too. Just, with how everything is digital, cloud, all that stuff. But it's funny because the Wii used to be the easiest one. 360 used to be the hardest one in that generation. And now I would say the 360 is the easiest one. And the PS3, I would say, is the most difficult one. Because even the 360 and the 360 and the Wii, you don't even need internet access for those ones to modify them. Now, if we're talking handhelds, I did say, I talked about the DS. I said essentially, if it's just a flash cart, don't really want to count that one. DSi has custom firmware. 3DS has custom firmware. I didn't even include the Vita on there. The Vita is, I would say, at about the same level of difficulty as the 3DS. It might be a little bit more difficult, maybe like a little bit more, but that one is still, it's a pretty good one to modify. And it's, to me, it's pretty simple to do. But the PSP, my goodness, incredibly easy contender. One of the easiest ones. And if you got your ducks in a row, like if you have the files, you copy, paste them to the PSP, you can have your PSP fully modified permanently within 1 minute. Like maybe 2 minutes. If you don't know what you're doing, 20 minutes. That's it. So that's one there. And even another that's, I would say near dear to me as well. The original Xbox, it can be confusing to people. It does throw off people, but I would say this one is easy if you can get a compatible USB drive. And that is the most difficult part, in my opinion, of soft modding an original Xbox. We've really just been talking about the software stuff here, right? But you can use, the skeleton key payload. You can just get straight up like the Rocky 5 soft mod. You need to get like a specialized software. So for example, you'd use like Fat Explorer. You plug in your USB drive, you get it formatted for the Xbox specifically. You copy and paste the folders on there that you need, load it up on the system. You don't even need an exploit game at this point, and within a few minutes, you can have a soft modded system pretty easily there. But again, the hardest part, even though, USB drive's easy enough, the original Xbox is so picky with USB drives. And you need a way to adapt it as well, too. You can build your own adapter, you can buy an adapter, someone built. There's different ways around it. So there's a few ways of doing that. Now, if we're talking about hard mods, I would say here, I've told people if you're wanting to get into hard mods, start with some of the cosmetics, right? Originally, this is several years ago, I said one of the best things, if you want to get into starter, right? If you just say, I kind of want to learn how to take apart systems, refurbish them, do a little bit of soldering, the Game Boy systems are awesome to do this with. Get yourself a Game Boy DMG, get yourself a full case kit for it and an IPS display. It gives you a little bit of everything. You learn how to take apart the system, how to clean it, how to maintain it, swap around the buttons, put in a new screen, and even a little bit of soldering. I've done only one DMG, and there's only 2 wires that you have to, because there's a speaker there, you have to desolder the wire from the old board, and then you solder it into the new board. And that's really all there is to it. And even then, the solder points are huge. Like the solder pads are huge for a small system. And because it's one of those older systems, it is built with repairability. It is built to be maintained like that in mind. So you can get a little bit of well-rounded everything. And by the end of modifying one of those systems, not only you should have a pretty kick-butt, customized system with a nice shell and everything, but then you can kind of decide where you want to go. I like the software side. I like the hardware side. What about the hardware side do I like? I really like the customization. I really like being able to clean the system. I really like the soldering. So you get kind of a well-rounded overall nice aspect of what you can do if you do one of those systems. And I guess you could do the same thing with a Game Boy Color and even a Game Boy Advance as well too. I know the Game Boy Advance, you can do a full screen replacement and shell swap and all that stuff. And I believe I've only done one of them. I want to say soldering is optional on there, but even then you should just solder, because I needed to solder 2 wires in order to change the brightness control settings for the screen that I installed. And it's just 2 wires. But even then, the DMG was much easier. But now I've even said, I'm like, if you're going to get into hard mods, if you kind of want to get that hardware itch there, I've told people, no, you don't have to do that. Actually, look towards the Switch. Reshell a Switch, that's incredible. Well, okay, the back shell, right? Not the full reshell, that's going to be more difficult. But just the back shell, it's cosmetic, really easy to do. The Joy-Con specifically, that's more the one I was recommending. Because Joy-Cons are plentiful. You can find them in different places, different prices. They're all over. There's maybe even in your household, you have several pairs of Joy-Cons right there. Some of them you might not even be using. Take a pair, get some new, get some new thumbsticks for them, get some new shells for them, and reshell them. They're not going to be super easy, but that's the nice thing about it. You can learn from there. It's incredibly well documented. It's pretty modern, and you can get some pretty nice looking shells by the end. And if you mess up, you can see where you messed up. You can learn from it there. It's a really good way of learning how to do some of those mods on there without touching a soldering iron. If you want to touch with a soldering iron, PS1 mod chips, I said earlier, they're easy enough to do if you get yourself a chip, or even if you want to learn how to burn one yourself and everything. But the PS1 motherboards, just from my experience, maybe I just have bad luck, a little bit sensitive. Like a little bit sensitive to touch and even just like heat and all that. The original Xbox is not all too bad. It can get confusing, I'll say this, but it's a good accessibility test if you want to try out your soldering skills there. You kind of want to learn with that. PS2, no, definitely not for a beginner. Even Xbox 360, I know there's people who've been beginners who were able to go from no experience to a hard modded 360. And to those, I'll say, congratulations, that is awesome. Seriously, good job. But I don't recommend it for the newcomer at all. Because I've been that newcomer who came in way too overconfident and I killed a system. I've seen so many people do it. I just tell people, no, practice, work on some other systems before you work up there. It's to the point with me, at least, for example, like I can do RGH3 for breakfast. I can do RGH3 in my sleep. But I also have the skill set for it. I have the practice. I have the hardware. I have the tools for it there. Not everyone is going to have that. So overall, I've actually talked about this topic a lot longer than I expected. I guess you all can tell that this is something that I really like, right? But I would say for the easiest systems, and I did write this part down earlier, if I'd had to rank it there, I would say if you're kind of wanting to get into modding, and for anybody who might be curious, or maybe they have someone in their life who's asking, or maybe even there's people who don't really mod directly, but they listen to the channel, they watch the channel, whatever it is. And I mean, that's kind of odd to me, but that's also really cool at the same time. Like, thanks for hanging out. I really appreciate it. I would say I got it down to like the top 5 systems for me, my opinion, that I would say are the easiest systems to modify. And these ones are just straight up software right here. I've already talked about the hardware stuff there. PS1 mod chips can be interesting there. OG Xbox, that's an interesting one as well too. Of course, like, the Game Boy systems, if you want to mess around with some soldering there. If you don't want to do that, get yourself some Joy-Cons, start swapping out the shells. But if we're talking about software itself, number one, Xbox 360. As funny as that is, Xbox 360, I would say that is probably the easiest system to modify, because the beauty of it is you just need a USB drive and you're just copying files to it. That's all it is. You're copying files to a USB drive and then you're editing the text in one document. That's all you're doing there. And you can have yourself a really nicely, wonderfully modified Xbox 360. Within a minute, within 2 minutes, you can set up your USB drive for that. So I would say, surprisingly, that is the easiest system. If you want to get an entry point, you want to get your feet wet, do that. The second easiest system I would say is the PSP. That one is pretty cool because you end up doing an installation. You don't have to, but I would really recommend it. You could do the custom IPL, make it permanent there. So that way you could just turn on the system and boom, it's modded. I always like those mods. Those are my favorite ones. But the PSP, super easy to do. You download, Arc 4, for example. You copy over files to the memory stick or, your micro SD card that you're adapting to it. And once you have them copied over, within a minute, maybe 2 minutes, you have custom firmware on your system. And that's it. The third one is actually a system I have not mentioned at all here up until now. The PlayStation 4. The reason why I'm saying the PlayStation 4 is because it's in a really good spot right now where, you do have to find a system that is on a older firmware. Right now, the latest, at the time I'm talking about this, the latest firmware is 3.50, and the latest fully exploitable firmware is 13.00. So you do have to find a system that is on an older firmware. But at this point, that's really not hard to do. The PS4 has not been a primary system for many years at this point. So you can go to the third-party market. You can go to the resale market. You could even look around your house. If if you haven't played your PS4 for a while, if you have a PS5 and you just kind of like let your PS4 go on the back burner, you haven't hooked it up for 2 years, guess what? You can modify that system right now. And the PS4 has, at the moment, it has a bunch of nice options. It's got WebKit, so you really just need to connect it to a network, and then you can modify your system pretty easily. It's got actually still WebKit. I'm even thinking 9.0 you needed a USB drive, but now you don't need that anymore. So for most firmwares, you can just use WebKit. You just need access to the web browser. It's pretty easy to do on there. Just get it on your network, follow a tutorial, you should be good. You don't even need to buy anything. That's the beauty of it. You don't even need to buy anything for most of them. If you want to get something a little nicer, this one's maybe a little bit more complicated, but you just need a USB drive for it. You can use View After Free. That works up to 13.00. You restore from a backup or you install it in some way. Point is, you install this modified application, essentially, and then that application turns into a jailbreaking tool directly on your system. Or if you want something where you don't want network access, like you don't want to rely on the network, you don't want to rely on the internet, none of that stuff, you can even just go with BDJB, which means that you can have a burned Blu-ray disc and you can use that as a tool to modify your PS4. Now, you have people who are going to say, dude, what are you talking about burning a Blu-ray? Like, no, like that is difficult. I don't want to get a burner. I don't want to buy Blu-ray, that's the other cool thing too. You can just buy a pre-made disc. There's third-party sellers who do it. There's AliExpress that does it. There's even, I know there's services where like you can supply them an ISO file and they can burn it to a disc for you and send that disc to you. So even if you don't want to get the blank Blu-rays, you don't want to get the burner, you don't want to get the adapter, all that stuff, with maybe $5 or $10 in your pocket, you can get yourself a BDJB disc and you can jailbreak most firmwares for the PlayStation 4. So it's incredibly affordable, incredibly easy, incredibly accessible to modify the PlayStation 4. So that's a pretty easy one. Maybe with that accessibility though, that might be a little bit of a contention point with the other two, because I'd say the fourth one, which I would say this one could have also been third place, is the Wii. The Wii, pretty easy. You really just need your Wii. You need an SD card. You need a way of getting files to the SD card. And you just follow a tutorial on how to click here, go here, do this, do that. Within 15-20 minutes, you'll have a permanently modified Wii using software only. And there's a lot of really awesome stuff you can do with the Wii. And for number 5, I would say it's the PlayStation 3. The PlayStation 3 is quite easy to modify. But I put this at number 5 because there's some little hiccups that you might run into. Whether it is the MBR setup, right? Like you need to have a USB drive, you need to set it up with MBR, you need to, it's really actually, it's good to like learn the structure and the formats and everything for a USB drive. If you have a USB drive that's too big where you can't just like regularly format it to FAT32, then you need to use another program or you need to go another way to format it to large FAT32. You need to make sure you have everything named properly. Just, setting up your folder structure on there. If you don't want to open up the system, you just want to do it, directly, like, through the internet, you do need internet access. If you can't access some of the websites or you're having trouble, you can try, self-hosting these sites. There's two options, there's custom firmware. So you patch the system and you install custom firmware, or there's even PS3 HIN. So every single PS3 is exploitable, but, you can kind of run into some of the other issues of, like I said, if you have a broken Blu-ray drive, you're going to have some issues updating your firmware. That's the main contender, right? You have a broken Blu-ray drive, you have a broken Wi-Fi board, you have a broken Bluetooth board, you have any of those, issues there, you're going to have a little bit of a bad time with your PS3. I'm not going to lie to you. That's why I put this as number 5. It's if you can kind of get things going on it, it's pretty easy. But if you start running into these little hiccups here and there, it's going to be a little frustrating. But it's not impossible. I can tell you all that. It's not impossible. So that's my ranking of what I would say is like, probably the top 5 easiest systems to modify. 360, PSP, PS4, Wii, PS3. There we go. I'm sure that surprises people as well too, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Man, well, I talked about that topic a lot longer than I expected, and I actually had to step away and refill my water right here, because hydration is important. But there's a couple other things I want to talk about here. So we're actually I thought this was going to be a shorter episode. That's a funny thing. I thought this was going to be a shorter one, but it's going to be going a little longer than I expected, which hopefully you all don't mind. Now, I'm going to share a game store story. For those who do not know, I like to share these in my solo episodes here, and I like to take at least one story from my days of working at a local mom-pop video game shop. Now, we had 2 locations. Both of them have been closed for so long now, and this is a job that I had. It was my first real job I had, and it was a retail gig, and I worked it for about 2.5 years. I started after I finished my sophomore year of high school, and then I ended up finishing it. I ended up leaving right before I went to college. So, yeah, this is a fun one here. This is actually one story. I'm only going to tell one story, but it might be a little bit of a longer one, right? It was the story of, let's call this guy Henry. I'm going to change his name. His real name's not even anywhere close to this, but I always change the names of people here. So we're going to talk about this guy Henry. Now, Henry was an interesting fellow. He started off, he was a good employee, and he was a great person to deal with, work with, talk with, and everything. But man, this is one of those guys. So quickly, he went from being a great employee to being our worst employee, one of our worst employees, to the point where he was one of the first people that we ended up firing. Now, he ended up being a favor hire for the boss, and I hated when favor hires happened, because almost every time the favor hires never worked out. You had these people who they were either not great employees, or they didn't know anything about video games, or even worse, they were both. And it was so frustrating because we had so many people who were applying who really were dying to work at this place, who would have been great employees, who were really knowledgeable about the scene, about video games, about all that. But my boss is kind of a little bit of a pushover, and if he, because my boss didn't really work that many hours at the shops, because him owning the shops, he kind of owned them, he did a few things, but he hired out people. He hired managers, he hired employees, he hired all those people, because he had his own career, and he had his own job, full-time job outside of it. He had that before he worked at the shop, before he opened it, he opened up the store, even after the store closed, he still had that career. So all that was going on. But one person from my boss's career ended up having a son. And this guy, I think he was 19 or so. He started working. He was 18, actually. I think he was 18 at the time. He had just started working in college. He had just started college. It was around the time he had his winter break. And his dad talked with my boss. And my boss ended up hooking it up with a job. And he came into the scene, right? And at first, he was really respectful, really nice, really chill dude, great person to talk to, right? Great employee overall. I had no complaints about him. My manager and I were just this guy's cool. That's awesome. And really, just I had nothing but good things to say about him. And then what happened was the cracks started showing up incredibly early. It was the first week it was all right. The second week, it was still all right. The third week, okay, now he's making a few comments. By week 4, he's having a little bit of an attitude, It was at the point where, within a month of working this job, he was acting like he didn't want to be there. For example, there'd be some days I would, depending on the store, I could either get there on foot, or I could bike, or I could drive, or some days if I couldn't do any of those, if I was working at a further store and I didn't have access to a car, I would end up getting a ride. Sometimes I'd get a ride from a coworker, sometimes from a manager. But there was one day I remember my manager asked if Henry could pick me up, and Henry agreed to it, right? So he comes over in his truck, I get in. This is not the first time I rode with him. I think it's probably the second time I rode with him, right? And we're there, and he just has this air about him. All of a sudden he's been there for a month and he thinks he's way better than me. And I don't, I'm one of those people, I don't think, I'm not just oh, I'm top tier, game shop employee. But I know I was good at my job, And he's just kind of making some remarks. He's just I remember the one thing he said, he didn't really say anything against me directly, but he made one comment and he just kind of said something, even with his tone, he said something well, I mean, you don't even really work here that much. And I remember I was just I looked at him kind of, and I was just thinking to myself, dude, yeah, I don't really work that many hours here and there, but you've only been here a month. How are you talking like that? And it started to get worse. he just didn't really have a great attitude. And I'm sure you all, I'm sure people here, anybody listening, I'm sure most people listening, most people, I'm sure most people listening have worked in some capacity somewhere, right? And you all know that if you're working like at a local place, you're on a small team, you get one person who has a bad attitude, it kind of just starts to bring things down, right? And it was to the point where, again, he's like an 18, 19-year-old dude. He's working at a game shop. Things are going well for him. He's got a girlfriend. He's in college. He's enjoying himself. All of a sudden, a month into working at the game shop, he's got this attitude like he doesn't like working there. Like, I think this was the day. This is when it kind of started getting worse. He made that comment in the truck. And then, we're working everything. And he's just smiling less. He's kind of dragging his feet a little more. He's working slower. And then it was just, he was making comments like, "Oh man, I didn't want to work today. Oh, it's a Saturday, man. I didn't really want to work today." And I'm just like, dude, I don't know. I'm weird. I'm excited. I like working here. I like going to work. I don't know. I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, dude, you've been here for like a month and a half. Like, you're acting like you don't want to work here. If you don't want to work here, just quit. Like, that's all it is, right? Just quit. And I remember he was just complaining more and more, and he was kind of just trying to act like he had a lot of authority at the store. Like, he was trying to act like all of a sudden he's been working there for like 6 years, even though he'd been only working there for about 6 weeks maybe. But he started kind of having that, right? And then it just started getting kind of strange because I remember it was around, I think it was around the holidays season. Or it might have been post-holiday, but it was, I think it all kind of blends. I think he actually started working a bit before the holiday season, and then it was around the holiday season because I remember that we were talking about Christmas shopping. We were doing all this stuff, right? And he's just kind of kicking his feet one day, and he's just like complaining that he has to work there on a Saturday and he doesn't want to be there. And it's Henry, myself, and my manager. My manager and I were super cool. He was like an older brother to me, right? And there was one day, Henry said something. He was like, "Hey, do you mind is it okay if I like go to the mall and I pick up something because I need to get a gift for my girlfriend. I need to get a Christmas gift for her." And manager's like, "What? Like after work?" He's like, no, I just want to know, like, we don't have many people here right now. Could I just like, drive over to the mall and like pick something up for my girlfriend? And manager's like, no, because you're working. And I think Henry even asked why he couldn't go. And my manager's like, dude, because you're working here. You are at work. Like, why do I have to explain this to you? And that's when he was more like, "Oh, I didn't want to work here today. It's a Saturday. I didn't want to work here today." He's just like having that, right? And like, there's a lot of like context I'm leaving out here, but it had been working up to this. Like, now the rest of us were kind of getting annoyed with him over the last few weeks. And I don't believe, in my heart of hearts, I don't believe he was stealing anything. But at the time it was a little bit suspicious too, because my manager was the one, he did the inventory himself. He did all the inventory because he got annoyed when other people would do the inventory and other people would mess up. And my manager started noticing that the Game Boy Advance games some of them were going missing. Some of them he wasn't able to find, which he found very strange, that it was around the time when Henry had started working there. And Henry did have an interest in collecting for the Game Boy Advance. Now, we never had proof of this. We never had evidence. And even all these years later, I guess I'm saying I'm choosing to believe that he didn't steal these Game Boy Advance games. But I also don't fully know what the truth is. That's just what it is. So he's complaining. We're just kind of getting a little bit annoyed with it, right? And then it was maybe an hour or two later. My manager goes up to Henry and he's like, "Henry, I got a job for you." And he's like, "Yeah, okay, what is it?" And he's like, "All right, you and Mario are going to go, and you got your truck, right?" "Yep." "All right, I want you two to go to this audio shop, and I need you to get me 6 feet of this specific cable." And Henry's like, "What?" And my manager's like, "Yeah, I just, y'all can go, and it's this shop right here, that shop, right? And here's the money for it, and just go get me like 6 feet of cable." And Henry's like, "No, why would we do that?" And my manager said, "Because I'm your manager and I asked you to." And the reason why my manager was doing that, he was getting back into car audio at the time. So he needed a little bit of speaker wire to hook up a subwoofer to his amplifier. And Henry's getting like really annoyed by this, right? And I was just I'm in the corner. I'm just kind of like laughing to myself a little bit. And then Henry all of a sudden is just like, wait a minute. If I can go to this audio place and I can get the cable, then I can go to the mall and get some for my girlfriend, right? And my manager's like, no, I said that you can go to the audio shop and you can get me the speaker wire. And Henry's like, well, if I'm getting the speaker wire, why can't I go to the mall and get, like, I am, you know what? It's been so many years. I'm sorry, I got to interrupt this. It's been so many years saying this out loud, like retelling this. I cannot believe the entitlement on this little twerp. Wow. Wow. Okay, getting back to the story. He's pretty much saying, wait a minute, no. If you're going to send me there to get speaker wire for you, then I can go to the mall to get something for my girlfriend, right? Manager said, no. Henry asks, why not? And my manager says, because I'm asking you. This is me asking you to do something. As your manager, I'm asking you to go to this audio shop and get me some speaker wire. And Henry's like, well, I don't see what the difference is. If I'm going to leave here and I'm going to go get speaker wire, why can't I just go to the mall and get something for my girlfriend? I need to get something for my girlfriend for Christmas. I don't have a Christmas present for her. And my manager's he's telling me, he's like, no, do you not understand? Like, it's because I'm telling you. I'm giving you permission to do this. I'm telling you that you can get me the speaker wire. I'm not telling you to go to the mall to get something for your girlfriend. That's not what you're doing this for. And he's like, well, I'm on the clock. I'm working here already, and I'm going to be out, so it doesn't make sense. You know what? I'm just going to go. Come on, Mario. And I'm standing behind the counter, and I'm like, no. And he's like, dude, okay, oh, come on, Mario. Stop messing with me. Come on, Mario. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to go. He's like, why not? I'm like, because you're wanting to... He's telling you to go to the speaker place and you're wanting to go to the mall. And you could see like Henry just kind of Colonel panicked. And he's like, I was kidding, man. I was just, and then he got frustrated and he just storms out of the building. And my manager, all of a sudden, he stops joking around. He gets out from behind the counter and he's like, hey, Henry, come back, Henry. He starts yelling at him. And I remember I said something like, I was like, what the hell? I said something like that. And my manager turns around, he looks at me, he's like, dude, Mario, don't even worry about it. We're not going to have to deal with this soon. So he went out to the parking lot. He tried to go after Henry. Henry got angry. He got in his truck. He left already. My manager comes back in. And we're just like in disbelief over what happened. And I asked my manager, I'm just like, hey, I got to know, why were you wanting me to go with him? And he was like, well, my manager said, well, I wanted to get speaker wire and like I can't leave. So I wanted him to go get me some speaker wire. But I wanted you to go with him because I thought you two could enjoy going together. Like, you know, it could be a thing you two do together. And I was like, oh, okay, that's thoughtful. I appreciate that. Thanks. But no, I'm good. And we kind of just started talking a little bit about Henry, and he my manager, at that point, he's just like, dude, we got to get rid of this dude. And he asked me what my thoughts were on him. And I was like, honestly, I thought Henry was a really cool dude at first. And he was chill, and he was nice, and he was knowledgeable. But, like, after a month of working here, he's now acting like he doesn't want to work here. And, like, what was that? He gave you that attitude on everything? And he's pushing, he's doing all this stuff. And my manager agreed with me. He's like, yeah, everything you said, I agree with you on there. I think the boss is getting ready to get rid of him. I was like, wait, really? He said, yeah, I think that's what's going on. So I want to say it was within the next 2 weeks from that, right? Because Henry didn't last. I don't think he lasted more than 2, if not 3 months. I want to say he didn't last more than 2 months. My boss wanted to have a talk with all of us about Henry. And my manager gave me a heads up. And he said, hey, look, the boss is going to call. He wants to talk to you about Henry. And I was like, oh, about what? He's like, he just wants to know what you think of Henry. I was like, what should I say? And my manager just said, just tell him the truth. He's going to ask you questions. Just answer him truthfully. So I think within 2 hours of him telling me that, it was one time when Henry wasn't there because that would have been really awkward. I got a call. And my boss talked to me. He said, hey, I want to talk to you about Henry. I said, okay, what's going on? I went to the back. He's like, tell me about Henry. And I pretty much kind of repeated everything that I've repeated here once or twice. And my boss mulled it over, and he really took my feedback to heart, right? And he said, okay, cool, thank you for letting me know. Now, I was not there for this, right? But my boss ended up making the decision to fire Henry. But my boss did not want to do it himself. Because you see, my boss was not a confrontational person. He liked to stay in the shadows. He liked to hide behind, not even behind the counter. He liked to hide in the back rooms, right? He liked to avoid. He wanted to stay away from any sort of conflict, right? So instead of my boss firing him, he had my manager fire him. And this is essentially the story of what I know happened, right? Apparently, the boss ended up coming into the store one day, and he told my manager's just there by himself, and he told my manager, hey, we're going to be getting rid of Henry. And my boss said, okay, no, and my manager said, awesome. And my boss said, well, I need you to get rid of Henry for me. And my manager didn't want to do it. But my boss was like, well, I don't want to do it either, man. And my manager said, okay, I'll do it. So my boss went into the back room, right? And apparently Henry had come through. I guess he knew that they arranged it. They told Henry come up to the store. So Henry comes up to the store, still being, entitled and everything, right? He comes up to the store and he tells, like, they start talking to, like, my manager and Henry start talking to each other. And my manager essentially says, Henry, we got to let you go. And Henry's like, he's not having it. He's like, why? Why? And my manager starts giving him reasons. And Henry says, I want to talk to the boss. And my manager says, the boss is not here. And Henry said, I don't care. I want to talk to the boss about this. And manager said, why? I'm the manager. I'm the one firing you. You're talking to me. Like, you're fired, dude. No, we're not doing this. And from what I was told, it's been so long since I've heard this, right? So I'm going to mess up some of the details here, but I guess you all are hearing it for the first time. From what I was told there, he kind of just stood there in disbelief, and he wouldn't leave the store for like maybe 15, 20 minutes, right? Just kind of just making things uncomfortable. He didn't want to take the fact that he had gotten fired. And then after like 20 minutes, my boss ended up coming out from the back room, and he sees Henry, and Henry sees him, and Henry just looks at my manager. He's like, oh, so the boss isn't here, huh? But essentially, even with that too, it was fruitless at that point, because the boss was just like, yeah, I was the one who told him to fire you, dude. So, like, you're fired. Like, sorry. I don't know how true this is. I never saw him after that. Even the time before that, that was really the last time I saw him. I never saw him in the store after that or anything. But from what I know, maybe this was it. Maybe, I'm not sure. There was another person who worked there for a while. I'll talk about her in a future story, a future episode, because we're going over long here. But she had told me her belief was that he was trying to kind of drag it out a little bit. I want to say it was something like he was trying to he didn't want to quit, but he was trying to drag it out a little longer before he got fired, because if he had been fired at like 3 months or 6 months, then he could have collected unemployment, but that wasn't the case. I believe he got fired within 2 months, like I'm saying, so he really didn't meet that threshold there. I don't know how true that part is. I think that was kind of just her speculating on that, but that was the story of Henry there, and how, like, really just having such a sour attitude for having a honestly pretty cushy retail job. Like, look, I've had my complaints about this store. I've had my complaints about it, right? Because in the end of the day, it's just a retail job. Yeah, it was cool working in a game shop, but it's a retail job at the end of the day. And retail is retail. Anybody who's worked retail can tell you about that, Just like working in service. Service is service. People can talk about the same thing there. But to really just sour such a nice opportunity and a really easy, cushy opportunity like that is just silly to me. Because I even remember when I would talk to, my manager, when I would talk to other people there, we even agreed. We're just like, yeah, there's parts of this job that annoy us, but like, honestly, it's not a hard job. It's an easy job. It's chill enough. Yeah, we're on our feet. Yeah, we have to deal with the public. That's annoying, but it's not a hard job. We could be doing construction, but at least we got this, thankfully. Yeah. Poor Henry. I have no idea what the dude is up to. I don't remember his last name. I never got his last name, so I have absolutely no idea. But who knows? Who knows? Just don't have an attitude, right? Just don't have an attitude. That's what I can implore to people there. Now we're going to do these last parts real quick. This is just really covering the games I've currently been playing, which is going to be very quick here. But Really, I've barely been playing anything, and it is annoying, right? There's just a lot of stuff in my offline life. I'm kind of have to plan around, work around, do some things. And it sounds like excuses, but it's just like, look, sometimes life just be getting busy like that, and that's kind of what's been going on in my life. So if I'm able to sit down and play a game, that's really cool, and I'm able to do that. But the only game I really finished was Ring Fit Adventure, which I finished for the upteenth time at this point. And the game I've actually been playing a little bit has been Cloudpunk. Now, Cloudpunk I picked up on Switch several years ago. It's really cool. It is a cool game. You're essentially new to this part of the country, and you have a vehicle, and you are working for Cloudpunk, which is a kind of shady, possibly illegal, not 100% sure delivery service. The voice acting is really awesome. It's got this really cool kind of like dystopian future pixelated cyberpunk-esque vibe and look to it. And one of the things I just learned about it, I'm playing on Switch, technically Switch 2, but I'm playing the Switch build of it. One of the things I just learned compared to playing it a few years ago is that you can play it in first person. So I've had such a fun time like getting out of the vehicle, going around different places, and just exploring the places in first person. The things I find funny though about it are that there's NPCs you talk to, and they have these really cool character arcs and, the voice acting and, how they look. So you can see a picture of how they look when they're talking. But when you look at the actual model there, it's just like an innocent looking pixelated mess that half the time doesn't even really look like the actual like icon on there. So it's that really funny juxtaposition, but I've really enjoyed it. Plus with the Switch 2's recent update where now you can essentially run Switch 1 software in docked mode portably on the Switch 2. The nice thing is you get access to higher frame rates at times, higher resolutions, just better abilities overall, I would say. So now actually playing it, it looks sharper, it looks nicer. It's really cool. It's been really cool experiencing that on the Switch too. So Cloudpunk has been pretty awesome there, but those have really been the only games that I've been playing. Unfortunately, my just because actually not even me, just all of us have been busy. Usually I talk a little bit more about, like playing some games with friends online and such, but we really haven't been able to assemble our online crew, and it's going to be a bit until, just because of live stuff happening, it's going to be a bit until we're actually going to be able to do that, but I do look forward to when we can do that again, and we are absolutely planning on doing it again. So there's that. Anyways, thank you very much for tuning into this episode of Mario's Minute, hanging out, listening to me rant, ramble, talk, tell some stories, give some opinions, things like that. I really do appreciate you for hanging out here by the end. And what I like to do, if you've made it to the end of one of these episodes, I like to pick a keyword or a key phrase. And if you use this keyword or key phrase in a comment on the video upload, I'll know that you made it to the end of this episode. Now, how about I might have used this one before, but typically I just find something on my desk and I look at it and I'm like, I'm going to use that. How about case? Let's do that. Do you use a case on your phone? If you use handheld systems, do you put cases around them when you're playing them? Do you put your systems back in a case when you are, carrying them around, taking them different places? Are you afraid to be caseless? Do you not mind things being caseless? It's interesting to me. It's like there's some people I see who really do need cases for their phones. And for example, like they really need cases for their phones, or those people who are very destructive and they refuse to use a case, or they just run their phones naked and they destroy them. And it's like, well, you did this with the last 12 phones. I don't know why you thought this one was different. Meanwhile, there's other people I would think of who they would use a case for their phone, right? Like I would think they'd be the person to do that. And they're just like, no, I want to run my phone naked. Like, no, I don't want a case on it. I want it to be completely caseless. That scares me. I'm going to be honest. That scares me. Every phone I use, every phone I own, I put a case on it. But if you use the word case in a comment on the video upload, I'll know you made it to the end of this episode. Either way, that's been about it for this episode of Mario's Minute. If you enjoyed this episode, a like would absolutely be appreciated. If you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too. But as I always say, this is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for listening and watching, everyone. And until next month.